Welcome to NASCAR 26 Dev Diary number 2. I'm here with Matt Lewis. I'm Kevin Bobbitt, your host, and we've got a couple of special guests here. Mike Berg and Steve Reese, a couple of guys that work on the car physics, among other things. So it's great to have you guys here.
Thanks, Kevin.
Steve, why don't we start with you? You've been with iRacing and iRacing Studios for about 10 years. Prior to that, you were with a bunch of NASCAR teams. You got a lot of experience. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, so I came to iRacing in 2016 as a senior vehicle dynamics engineer from NASCAR. Actually, I worked for several Cup teams and spent most of my career with Team Penske, working with Joey Logano, Brad Keselowski, Kurt Busch. Came to the company to work on the NASCAR product, and then shortly thereafter transitioned into the dirt product and worked on various dirt products over the years until I moved over to work on the console products about 4 or 5 years ago, starting with World of Outlaws and then transitioning into NASCAR 25 and now NASCAR 26.
And Mike, you have one of the coolest jobs, I think, personally. You're kind of the gameplay guy, right? Like you do the AI speeds, you work on the lines, you do all of the actual things that go into gameplay. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I certainly don't have the real world experience in racing that Steve has. I came essentially straight from Formula SAE into iRacing, starting out in the QA department, then working through some vehicle systems development, primarily with damage over on the iRacing product, before moving to the console side with NASCAR 25 and NASCAR 26, where I work through chassis tuning, vehicle setups, as you mentioned, AI speeds, and essentially everything else having to do with the user driving the car.
So in this Dev Diary, we've got a couple of big topics. First, and probably the most exciting one, is dynamic track. And I know you've worked on that a lot, Steve. Do you want to talk a little bit about what you've done on that and what makes that so special and unique in this product?
Sure. I mean, that's been a huge feature within iRacing for many, many years, certainly before I even came to the company, dynamic track. And that was something we wanted to carry over to this product this year in NASCAR 26. So providing a race experience that's more dynamic, where the track grip levels will change as you run through the races, as the race progresses, and you'll be able to choose different lines and widen the racing groove, providing a much more exciting, realistic, and dynamic experience.
So it's not just a visual thing, it actually changes the way the cars drive, right?
The grip levels are changing as the race progresses, depending on where cars are running on the racetrack, so you're going to have to search around to find the grip to optimize the performance.
That's half the fun, and I know this has been a hugely requested feature from NASCAR 25, so it's exciting that it's going to be in NASCAR 26.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great feature.
Yeah, and Mike, maybe talk about how does that translate to the player, right? Like, what is the player going to experience from sort of that first lap in practice all the way through the checkered flag in the race?
They're definitely going to notice that evolution, especially when you're looking at the entire length of the race weekend. So if you start out running the very bottom lane of every track at the very beginning of practice, and you run that lane through the entirety of the race, you can do that, but you will be leaving lap time on the table. So especially, it opens up more options as the weekend goes on, is the idea. In NASCAR 25, we wanted to promote multi-groove racing, and so we made, to the best of our ability, every lane work well if you were driving correctly. And that will not be the case, at least at the beginning of the race in NASCAR 26. You're going to have to find out for yourself where the grip really is as you move through the race, as you work your way through traffic, try to get to the front.
It's a whole new kind of strategy element that goes into finding your line, finding your groove.
Oh, completely. And especially in races, if you're competing online, for example, you are going to be able to experiment and move away from the line that everyone else is running to try and find that speed.
To go hand in hand with that, you know, dynamic track is a big piece of it, but we've also talked a little bit about tire model changes and sort of this new tuning aspects that you guys have been really hard at work on making those changes. So what can you tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So this evolution of the tire model that existed in NASCAR 25 is really designed to be a differentiating vector between users. So making throttle application matter more, making brake application matter more. In the past, you could really slam on the brakes as hard as you possibly could to get yourself out of any sort of trouble. In a real life, in a real life race car, slamming to 100% brake going into turn 1 at Watkins Glen is not a good idea. So you're really going to want to learn where the braking point is on corner entry, learn how much brake to apply, and then the same thing applies with throttle on corner exit. So you're going to have to find where that tire will start slipping longitudinally versus laterally. In the previous game, we had roughly half of the tuning parameters that we have in the tire model for this year, and we're working through using those to their fullest extent.
We've really decoupled the lateral and longitudinal behavior, so you just have to, like as Mike said, just the forces are separated so that the drivers need to apply things in a more realistic manner, cornering, braking versus throttle application. So,
is it fair to say that you're going to have to sort of relearn how to drive the car at the top? If you want to get maximum performance, you're going to have to drive it completely differently than in NASCAR 25?
Certainly, you're going to have to relearn how to drive at any track requiring heavy braking, heavy acceleration. So the short tracks, the road courses, anywhere, for example, the tracks where NASCAR recently changed their engine package for the Cup Series cars. We've reflected that change in the game as well, obviously, in addition to these tire model changes.
That's the 750 horsepower.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and you can definitely feel the difference, both in your lap times and just in throttle response, ability to make passes, that sort of thing.
So I think it's pretty exciting that you'll have to relearn how to drive because you're going to get more out of it. It's like a brand new game. But the question is, most of our players are going to be using hand controllers, right? So how do these changes work with that, and what have we done to make the controller experience better?
Well, the first and probably most important thing is we've given the users more options. So there will be more tuning parameters that the users have in their settings menu to be able to fine-tune their personal controllers to fit their driving style or fit what works best for them. I know for an absolute fact that the vast majority of users would not enjoy my controller settings that I drive with. And a lot of users wouldn't prefer using a controller at all. They'd prefer to use a wheel. But when it comes to the controller settings, it really is a personal thing, and we're allowing people to really get into the nuts and bolts of fine-tuning that this year.
And so, Steve, one of the questions we get a lot is like, what do you guys use when you're tuning the game, right? Like, are you a controller guy? Are you a wheel guy? How do you go about it?
I think Mike uses both, probably, perhaps wheel more, but I tend to rely exclusively on the controller. And as Mike said, there's just so many options this year. I do think it's important to start with one of our solid baselines and then kind of tune it as you would tune a race car, which is generally one change at a time. We always focused on that at the racetrack, one change at a time, so you know what is doing what. And it's really the same way you would attack or approach attacking the controller settings.
Yeah, it's a good point, and I've brought this up before as well. Going into those settings, you can get yourself in just as much trouble as you can help, right? So small changes, 1 or 2 sliders at a time. Don't go beyond that to exactly your point.
Just like tuning a car.
Yeah.
And Mike, we have improvements on force feedback as well, though, right?
Yeah, so like Steve said, I'm primarily a wheel user, although I do jump back and forth for various tuning purposes. And this year we've been given the keys to the kingdom, if you will, as far as force feedback tuning to really get into the deep code and make some pretty substantial improvements across the board. I think force feedback was one of those issues where there is such a wide range of hardware out there, and it is essentially impossible for any one person to be the control person to understand what force feedback settings work for the cheapest wheel on the market or the most expensive wheel on the market, the least powerful wheel on the market, the most powerful wheel on the market. In my office at home, I have a fair range all the way from a 2 Newton meter gear driven wheel all the way up to a 25 Newton meter of torque direct drive wheel. And based on my range, I think we have found a default setting that is going to be great for the majority of users. However, we're still going to include even more tunable settings for the users themselves to be able to dial in their specific hardware.
And I think that's the key, right? Whether it's controller tuning or wheel tuning, it's all about the amount of time that you put in, because you have those extremes on just the wheel, physically how they're different, but then you have different preferences, right? Like, I'm gonna want something totally different than Steve and Kevin, and dialing in your own personal preference in that wide berth of physical options as well.
I think the short story here is that the driving experience will be better for everybody, regardless of what controller setup they use.
Absolutely. Right out of the box, it's going to be better for you, and you have the ability to make it better for yourself from that new baseline.
So you just said right out of the box, it's a great experience, regardless of controller. But the controller is super important, as well as car setup. So how can a player really maximize their experience?
Yeah, I think this year's version of the game is just far superior in terms of your ability to go from being a beginner user to an advanced hardcore user and enjoy the game. You know, you don't have to be a super experienced driver to have a lot of fun with the game, but if you are very experienced and you want to dive deeper, the options are nearly endless in this version of the game.
Yeah, it's really all about that. It's all about giving the user options to customize their experience if they want to, but also giving them a good experience to start off. And like Steve said, you can really learn and grow as a driver throughout using this game, and even through something we haven't mentioned yet, which is the peak performance mode, which is a training mode where they can learn to drive like me. Those lines are my lines that I've run. So if you want to learn how to drive, for example, Kansas, the way I have driven Kansas, we will teach you how to do that.
It's probably safe to say Mike has driven more lines or more laps than anyone of this game, I would say.
It's definitely.
That's a good point, though, because a lot of players will grow as they play the game. You may, out of the box, you may be simple, and I just want the baseline, whatever it's set at, and then as you become a better driver within the game, the options are there, right?
I think that peak performance tip is key, because even if you do have a ton of laps, there might be a tenth or two here or there that you can pick up by watching what Mike has done, right? It might be letting off a tick earlier or getting back on it a tick earlier, depending on the track. Maybe using a tiny bit of brake where you haven't typically been using a little bit of brake to set the car down. Like, I think no matter what your skill level is, you're going to get some value out of that mode.
Yeah, absolutely. Seeing someone else try any task is helpful to you. Even if you're seeing someone of a higher skill level than you, of a lower skill level than you, just seeing how someone else approaches a problem is always going to be helpful to your learning process.
All right, well, guys, thanks for joining us here on the Dev Diary number 2. It was great to have you. Great insights on everything. Pre-sale is available right now. Early access is September 15th, and regular access is September 18th. You can check everything out at NASCAR26.com. Thanks for watching.